into this week's episode. I'm excited to have with us today Damion Lupo with My Gold Advisor to learn more about his story. What motivates him? What are his passions? See, as someone who talks to and meets fellow business owners and entrepreneurs on a daily basis, I'm always interested in finding out about their story. So I created this podcast as a way for my fellow business owners and entrepreneurs to share their stories. My guests are some of the brightest, caring, most passionate people that I know. And I think once you hear their story, you'll agree. Now here's Damion. Damion, are you there?
I am.
Dude, thank you for joining me today. This means a lot to me. I appreciate you joining my podcast.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
All right. First question, Damion. Before we talk about you professionally, in 3 or 4 minutes, give me your backstory. Where did you grow up? What do you enjoy doing in your spare time? And what did you do before becoming an advisor?
Definitely. So I grew up in Alaska. I was raised there. And when I was 17, right out of high school, about 15 minutes after I graduated, I ran out of there because it's so remote and far away from everything. And then I spent time all over the country, operating some businesses. I had an insurance company and a real estate development company that had offices in 7 different states. And so I did a lot of entrepreneurial type of ventures, network marketing stuff. I was all over the place. And so I ended up doing those things until I stumbled across the metals, and get into that in a little bit. But they kind of captured my attention because of the meltdown in 2008. And so I spent a lot of time building that business up and found a unique niche with it. And so while I was doing that, I continued to develop my other passion, which is teaching. And that ends up spilling into pretty much everything I do, the books I write, and my favorite thing to do in the world, which is teach martial arts. And I actually founded my own martial art called Yokido, which is a blend of yoga and Aikido. So basically everything I do is some form of teaching, and it's what kind of it serves my soul, and it helps people. And so businesses end up getting wrapped around that. But that's basically what I spend my time doing with business and teaching.
Sweet. So tell me the story about how you became a precious metal My Gold Advisor. How did you get into that?
Well, it was kind of an accident. When I was a kid, I remember seeing coins because my dad was a coin collector, and like 45 years ago, he had a little secondhand store in Montana. So I was always around it, and it's kind of interesting. But then in 2008, when the market melted down, and I had a pretty big oopsie daisy with my real estate stuff, I had to retrench and sold everything off. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do? I'm a little nervous about real estate at the moment because everything was falling. And so I ended up buying a bunch of gold and silver. And once I did that, I was looking at it thinking, well, I should probably learn about this. And so I dug into it and realized there was an opportunity to teach people about it, what I was finding out, and maybe putting a business around it. And then ultimately I found the niche that I'm unique for with something called the QRP. So it was really just an accident. I was moving assets, trying to keep up with what was going on with the economy and protect what little I had left. And then it ended up becoming the thing I was focused on since then for the last 7 years.
Awesome. So you've been doing this since about 2008, 2009?
That's right.
Cool. All right. The next 3 questions, I call it the minute to win it, are 3 questions. Take about a minute each to answer them. What has been your biggest challenge since you've become an advisor?
I think the thing that's challenging about being an advisor is that so many people call themselves advisors. And the reality is most advisors, quote unquote advisors, are salespeople. And there's less of a teaching capacity and there's more of a pitch going on. And so when people go, well, what's different? Well, I mean, the truth is we all have essentially the same product, but it comes down to, are you teaching? Are you spend most of your time teaching? Is there access? The difference is probably the interaction, the actual personal relationship. And the thing that I like to ask any advisor is always, are you doing what you're telling me? I mean, show me what you're doing, and if you're doing it, then that says a lot. Years ago, I had a financial services person in my life that was advising me, and I remember asking him when he was trying to sell me a big life insurance policy. I said, "Okay, this sounds really good, but I want to know what you're doing." And he opened up his financials and showed me what he was doing. He showed me his balance sheet, and I said, "You literally have like $5 million in cash value. I am in because you're consistent. There's integrity between what you're telling me and what you're doing yourself. So I think with the biggest challenge is differentiating when there's so much noise and so many people trying to pitch things with good twists and stories, and just helping people understand that there's a difference, and it has everything to do with the integrity of who they're working with.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, Damion, pretend we're in a time machine and go back to right before you started doing precious metal investing. Knowing what you know now, what is one piece of advice you would give your former self?
That's easy. This was my $100,000 mistake. So there's something called paper metal, and Wall Street and the talking heads on CNBC and everywhere else, like if they talk about precious metals, the thing they'll tell you to do is go buy an exchange traded fund. They'll tell you to buy GLD or SLV, which are basically stock. They're paper metals, and it's a representation of some potential metal that you have in some warehouse somewhere. And so I thought, this is great. I'll use it my IRA to go buy some of these things. And what I didn't understand at the time was the massive manipulation that's going on by JP Morgan Chase, by big banks, hedge funds and things. And so I bought into these things, and I ended up having about $100,000 in this IRA, and it literally vaporized down to a few $1,000s in a matter of months because of two things. One, the manipulation that was going on, and there was a lot of selling that was artificial. And two, I happened to be involved with a company called MF Global, which if the listeners aren't familiar with it, it was a company that did a lot of futures. So farmers and different people would use this company to hedge their stuff. And a guy named John Corzine, the former governor of New Jersey, ran it and literally was using his clients' money, like mine, and trading in European bonds and things, and which is illegal, but he did it, and they ended up losing like $1 billion. The company went bankrupt, and the accounts were frozen or vaporized. So the point of all that, what did I learn? I learned that if you're going to invest in metals, hold it. Hold the metal. That way there's nobody can manipulate it, and it doesn't matter what somebody does that's a little funky in Europe, you're not going to lose your ass.
That's powerful. Wow. Take me to a time, I mean, when you thought, wow, I'm making a difference in somebody's life or your life.
This has happened a few times because of the niche that I've carved out with this thing called the QRP. And the QRP is a qualified retirement plan. So most people know of this as like a 401k. And this particular type of 401k gives people checkbook control of their retirement money. And what most people don't realize is that you can actually buy silver and gold, physical silver and gold with your retirement money, and have it delivered to your home or wherever you want to have it. So a few people that came into my life over the last few years became aware of this, and their problem and their pain point was that they were sick and tired of having Wall Street manipulate their stuff, and they felt like they had no control, and they were stuck. So several of them had been in cash for years because they didn't trust Wall Street, and they loved metals. And then when they found out they could do this, I had one guy that had 7 figures in his 401k, and he had his attorney vet everything that I was presenting for a couple of months, and at the end of the couple of months, his attorney said, green light, you're good to go. So he was able to get control of his stuff, and it wasn't stuck in cash. He worked a lifetime to have this money built up, but he couldn't do anything with it other than buy the stuff on Wall Street, which he didn't trust. So giving people power over their investments, especially the retirement stuff that they've worked so hard for, is really, really fulfilling, and it's making a difference where I don't feel like people are stuck with stuff that's gonna crucify them when the Wall Street banksters and all these guys do what they do, which is whatever's in their best interest. So it's awesome to be able to do that for people, and I see it happening over and over again.
Great. That's awesome. Now I want to dig deeper here. Take about 5 minutes on this one. I want you to take our listeners on a journey with you. Imagine that you are dropped off on a desert island. The natives have no idea what it's like to invest in precious metals. And you want to tell them the 4 to 5, 6 benefits of investing in metals, and why they would need your services.
All right. Well, so if the first thing that came to mind, or that comes to mind when I think about going to an island with natives, is they're going to see something and it's going to be real shiny, and they're not really going to have a clue what that means. It's shiny, I can't eat it. which is actually one of the things that comes up with the gold and silver. I can't eat it. I can't do anything with it. So the thing I think about is on that island or in our world, things can be chaotic. There's a lot of uncertainty. But what ultimately happens is that people are looking for certainty, and this island is no different than our lives. The certainty that we have right now is that as much chaos as there is, we know that there's going to be money printing. We know that there is going to be paper flooded into the market by the central banks. And the only way to protect against that is something that's a hard asset. So it's all fine if we're in a world of barter. So like on the island, we've got everybody's bartering. They're trading cows for chickens and coconuts and all that kind of thing. But ultimately, for efficiency's sake, we end up using money. And money, the most common thing that always has been money, is gold and silver. So eventually, the natives are going to use gold and silver. It's going to be a natural form to hold wealth, to create wealth and trade. And it used to work like that until 1971 when we went to this paper currency thing. The important thing for people to remember is that this printing of money, which is happening now, it would happen eventually on the island as soon as you have some type of bankster getting a hold of the money system on the island. We're going to continue to print, and so long as we keep printing, there's going to be an inflationary effect. And what that means is people are going to lose they're going to lose buying power. And the thing that's been offsetting this for a long time has been the globalization, which is pushing prices down. So what that means for everybody that's listening is that ultimately there's going to be a pop. There's going to be a pop in the value of all this paper currency, dollars, euros, yen. They're all made up out of thin air. And if you, the listener, or if the natives want to protect their wealth, the best way I know to protect it with some type of insurance is to have something that's real in their hands, and that's real gold and real silver. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, people that are diving in the water finding crashed ships aren't going to be looking for paper U.S. dollars. They're going to still be looking for gold coins. So I would suggest people think about that and put some of those away, because you don't know what's going to happen, other than you do know that there's going to be continued printing indefinitely.
So to follow up on that question, before we get to our last question, what's the advantage of investing in precious metals versus investing in stocks and bonds and mutual funds?
The biggest one
I don't know if it's the advantage, but the differentiation, maybe.
I would say it's a differentiator, and it's an advantage that you have total control. When you physically hold something, there's something called counterparty risk. And for example, in stocks, you've got companies that can do things that puts your investment at risk. The markets can collapse. Somebody can perform fraud. The interest rates can change. All these things can happen. There's a risk. Some other party has the ability to influence your investment, and you don't have any control of it. With metals that you hold, you literally have total control, and it's private. Everything else is going to have some type of public nature to them, and you simply don't control them. I love real estate, but there's still other people that influence it, like county regulators or city officials or zoning people, you've got mortgages, you've got property taxes. There's still stuff there. Metals are the only thing that doesn't have anybody manipulating it that you're in total control of.
Beautiful, beautiful. One last question before we wrap. Think of an internet resource or an app like Google Calendar or Voxer that you could not do without. What is it?
My off button.
How often does that get turned off?
It's funny. It's the most powerful thing I have in my life to actually focus and create. And it's whether I'm writing books or having calls with someone or connecting with the dogs or whatever I'm doing. The truth is there's so much noise out there. There's so many things vying for our attention. The off button on my phone, and maybe it's the television, but I think the phone, there are so many apps and so many things that can buzz and ding and tweet and all this other stuff. The off button is my favorite button because it creates serenity with one click.
That's great. That's hilarious. Thanks so much for joining us today. Leave our audience with one parting shot. What is a book you've read or maybe written or a quote that you live by that has helped mold you?
So I'm going to let the listeners know that if they want to go to my website, mygoldadvisor.com, my books are on the site, and they can click on those. It takes them to Amazon, and they can actually get the books for free. on Kindle. They can also reach out to me on the site, and I'm happy to mail them a copy if that's better for them. The one quote that I love, I think it's great for everybody, is that there are no stupid mistakes, only lessons from the universe that are really gifts for us to grow, and either we learn and evolve, or the universe is going to send them back in a different form to repeat. So take advantage of the mistakes, learn and grow, and life keeps getting better.
That's a good one. I have not heard that one yet. That's a good one. So, Damion, how would our listeners get a hold of you if they wanted to learn more about investing in precious metals or just bounce a couple questions off of you?
If they want to go to mygoldadvisor.com, they can reach me, Damion at mygoldadvisor.com. Best way to reach me is shoot me an email, and I will personally respond to them and do whatever I can to support, educate, and help them through their journey into the metals world.
Damion, thank you so much for joining us today. It means a lot to me. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed Damion's interview with Frederick Advice Givers. If you could go to iTunes and leave a review what you thought about Damion's interview, I would appreciate it, good, bad, indifferent. Damion, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Eric. It's been a pleasure, man.
And we are out.